He wanted me to sleep with another man. Not just any man, a black man. And not just sleep with him, but allow my husband, my partner of 15 years, to watch. My name is Chloe, and I am a 37-year-old married woman, living in the manicured, deceptively quiet suburbs of Houston, Texas. I have been with my husband Mason for nearly half my life. We have built a quiet existence, a life that is stable, comfortable, and safe. Perhaps too safe. Mason is a software engineer, a man of logic, of calm, of predictable patterns. I am, or at least I was, a stay-at-home wife ever since our daughter left for college. I used to teach at an elementary school, but something inside me faded when the house became quiet. The silence, I've learned, makes a room for something darker to grow. Something I had ignored for years. Desire. A restless, hungry thing I had forgotten how to name. This is a story about a fantasy that escaped its cage. It's a story about a game that became too real, and the wreckage it left behind. It's a warning about the devastating difference between what we think we want and what we can actually survive. Before we step into that hotel room where everything changed, I want to invite you to join us. If you are intrigued by stories that explore the darkest, most complicated corners of human desire, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and clicking that notification bell. Your engagement allows us to continue bringing these unforgettable true stories to you. It started as harmless teasing the way these things often do. It was in the quiet intimacy of our bed during pillow talk that Mason would mention things. Wild, outrageous fantasies. Threesomes roleplay, even the strange, unsettling idea of being a cuckold. I would roll my eyes, kiss his neck to silence him, and dismiss it all as nothing serious, just the fleeting fantasies of a bored middle-aged man. But over time, the tone shifted. The idea kept coming back more frequently, more detailed. He started saying names describing scenes with a clinical, almost unnerving precision. He started talking about a man named Henry. He told me they had met at the gym. He said Henry was different, confident, dominant. He spoke of Henry with a strange mixture of awe and envy. Mason said he'd seen Henry with his own wife, the easy way he commanded her attention, the possessive way he would touch her. He said watching them had changed how he saw sex, how he saw power. He said Henry could do things, could exude a kind of raw masculine energy that he, a logical, quiet software engineer, never could. And then came the words that planted the seed. He said that maybe I deserved to feel that too. I asked him if this was about him not being enough for me. No, he said, his eyes intense. It's about freeing you. It's about giving you something unforgettable, about letting go of all the shame, all the rules, and just feeling. I didn't believe him. Not really. I thought it was just a strange, elaborate fantasy he was working through. Until the night at the restaurant. It was our anniversary. We were at a fancy downtown steakhouse with dark wood and low lighting. He told me Henry was upstairs waiting for us in a hotel suite he had booked, that he had already spoken with him, that Henry had agreed to take me. Mason paid the bill, his hands perfectly steady. I walked out of that restaurant, trembling, my legs unsteady in my high heels, but I followed him anyway. The elevator ride up to the penthouse floor felt like it lasted forever. I stared at my own reflection in the mirrored walls. Lipstick, perfect hair curled my eyes wide and frightened. My heart begged me to run. My thighs, my body, a part of me I didn't recognize, begged me to stay. The hotel door opened before Mason could even knock. And there he stood, Henry, shirtless, wearing only a pair of loose black joggers that hung low on his hips. His chest was broad, carved from dark polished wood, and covered in intricate swirling tattoos. He looked me dead in the eyes and smiled a slow, confident smile, as if he had already owned me for hours. He said nothing. He just stepped aside and let me in. The room smelled like expensive cologne and clean masculine sweat. The lights were dim. There was a bottle of champagne on ice, and there was one enormous bed. Mason didn't say a word to me. He just walked over to a leather armchair in the corner of the room and sat down a silent, expectant observer. He looked excited. Henry walked over to me, his presence so intense it felt like it was sucking the air out of the room. He placed a warm, heavy hand on my hip, and whispered in my ear, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that vibrated through my entire body. "If you want me to stop," he said, "you say the word, otherwise you're mine tonight." I didn't say stop. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He kissed me then, a hard, possessive kiss that tasted of confidence and power. He took control instantly. He tore the straps of my silk anniversary dress from my shoulders and let it fall to the floor in a heap. I was bare before him in seconds. His hands were firm, purposeful, moving over my body with an unnerving expertise. He lifted me as if I weighed nothing at all, and laid me on the cool, crisp sheets of the bed. And when I saw him remove his joggers, everything inside me changed. He was magnificent, 12 inches, and thick, heavy, pulsing with life. My body froze for a second, my mind racing with a mixture of terror and a shocking primal awe. But my soul was already gone. Henry touched me like no one had ever touched me before. He read my body like it was his favorite book. Every gasp, every arch of my back, every involuntary moan, he knew how to ruin me gently, expertly. And my husband Mason. He watched everything, his hand moving slowly, rhythmically inside his own pants, his eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and something else I couldn't yet name. I lost count of how many times I came. I lost track of time completely. Hours slipped by in a blur of sweat and pleasure so intense it bordered on pain. My voice cracked. My body was not mine anymore. It was Henry's canvas, and he painted me with the rhythm of his hips. By the time he finally collapsed beside me, his body heavy and slick with our shared sweat, my legs were numb, my mind was blank, my soul was scorched. My husband walked over, leaned down, kissed my damp forehead and whispered, "Thank you." I turned my head on the pillow to look at Henry. He just smiled, that slow, knowing smile, and I knew in that moment that I was never ever going to be the same again. What happens in a moment like that, when a fantasy becomes a reality so intense it rewrites your entire being? It's a place very few people are willing to go. If you are captivated by this raw and honest story, if you feel the power and the danger of this moment, please hit that like button. It lets us know that you appreciate these deep dives into the complexities of human desire. I woke up sore, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. My body ached in places I never knew could ache. My throat was raw from moaning. My thighs were still trembling. And my soul was somewhere lost between a profound, lingering guilt and a deep, insatiable craving. Mason lay next to me in the hotel bed, still asleep, one arm draped lazily over my waist. I turned to look at him. He was peaceful, content, smiling in his sleep, like a man who had just lived out his deepest, most cherished dream. But my mind was not on him. It was on Henry. It was on his deep voice, the calm, possessive grip of his hands, the sheer, undeniable heaviness of his body on mine, and the powerful, deep stretch that had broken something wide open inside of me. He had touched a nerve I never knew existed, a deep, dormant well of submission and raw animalistic pleasure. And now I could not forget it. I did not want to. When Mason woke up, he kissed me on the shoulder and said, "You were amazing." I smiled weakly, but the truth was I hadn't been pretending. I hadn't been performing for him. I had been devoured, owned, and completely, utterly unleashed, and I wanted it again. That afternoon, Mason made us breakfast in the hotel room. We acted like a regular couple on a weekend getaway, but I was distracted. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Henry's face hovering over me. I felt his breath on my neck. His voice echoed in my ears. The memory of him haunted me. Later that week, back in the sterile quiet of our suburban home, Mason brought him up again. He said Henry wanted to see me again. I tried to act unsure, to seem hesitant, as if I wasn't desperate for another taste of that fire. But the truth was, I had already dreamt about it every single night since we had met. We met Henry the next Saturday at a luxury Airbnb Mason had rented just outside of town. It was secluded, private, with clean white sheets and expensive scented candles. Mason brought a bottle of vintage wine and said he would stay in the corner again, just like before. Henry arrived late. He walked in like he owned the place, like he had just stepped out of a music video. He wore a simple tight black t-shirt that clung to his sculpted chest and a pair of gray sweatpants that didn't hide much. He looked at me, smiled that slow, predatory smile, and said, "Miss me?" I didn't respond with words. I just walked up to him and pressed my lips to his. This time, it was different. Slower. Deeper. He took his time undressing me with a torturous patience, kissing every inch of my skin, whispering things in my ear that made me melt into a puddle on the floor. He bent me over the back of the couch, spread my legs apart, and slid into me with a slow, deliberate ease, as if my body had been waiting for him, had been made for him. Mason watched silently again from his corner armchair. But this time, something was different in his eyes. The raw excitement was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Something sharp. Something that looked almost like pain. Maybe it was jealousy. Maybe it was regret. But in that moment, I did not care. My body no longer belonged to my husband, not in that moment. It belonged to Henry. Henry whispered my name like a secret prayer. His strokes slow, at first teasing me, building me up to the edge, and then crashing into me with a force that made me scream. I couldn't hold back. I moaned so loud I bit into the pillow to muffle the sound. But Mason heard it all. Every second. Every plea. And he never looked away. When it ended, I collapsed on the floor, my legs shaking, my lips numb. Henry sat beside me, pulled me into his chest, and stroked my hair gently. Mason walked over and kissed my forehead again, but this time his lips lingered for a moment too long. He looked from me to Henry, and he said, his voice quiet, "He makes you feel things I never could, doesn't he?" I said nothing. He already knew the answer. After that night, everything changed. The dynamic shifted. Henry began texting me directly. "Just checking in," he said, "just saying hello." But his words always came with heat, with a spark. We started responding late at night when Mason was asleep. I would reread our conversations in the dim light of the bathroom, my heart racing, my fingers wandering. I was becoming addicted, not just to the sex, but to him, to the attention, to the danger. One afternoon, Henry sent me a message. "Want to see me without Mason?" I stared at it for almost an hour, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, and then I typed back a single word, "Yes." We met at a nondescript hotel near the edge of the city. No cameras, no questions, just raw, dangerous, unadulterated lust. The moment I walked into the room, Henry grabbed me, pushed me against the wall, and kissed me like he had been starving for me. That night, there was no slow buildup, no scented candles, no wine, just pure, raw passion. He bent me over the dresser, pulled my skirt up, pushed my panties to the side, and entered me in one smooth, powerful motion. It was rough, wild, filthy. I screamed his name. He growled mine. We both lost control. I came 3 times before he even thought about finishing. When I got home that night, Mason was in the living room watching TV. He asked me if I'd had fun shopping. I just nodded. He smiled, but I couldn't meet his eyes. I showered that night with the water burning hot, scrubbing Henry's scent off my skin, but it was already too deep. He had buried himself inside of me deeper than anyone ever had, and not just physically, emotionally. Mason started to notice. I was distracted during our silent dinners, distant in our now passionless bed. I touched myself more than I touched him. I stared at my phone like a teenager waiting for a crush to text back. One night he finally said it, his voice, flat, devoid of emotion. "You're falling for him, aren't you?" I froze. I tried to deny it, but I could not lie. Not about this. "I don't know," I whispered, which was a lie in itself. He just stood up and walked away. That was the first time he did not kiss my forehead. I started seeing Henry more. I stopped telling Mason. At first I felt a pang of guilt, but soon I just felt alive. Henry brought something out of me I never knew existed. He made me feel powerful, sexy, completely, utterly desired. He took control in ways that made me want to surrender completely. And I did. One night, Henry looked at me while I was lying naked in his bed, and he said something I never expected. I could steal you, you know, if I wanted to. I laughed, but deep down a part of me wasn't sure if I wanted to be stolen. I leaned back in the warm bath water, my eyes closed, trying to soothe my aching body. But no amount of rose-scented soap or the memory of a gentle husbandly touch could wash away what had already taken deep root inside me. I was his now. Henry's. Even when Mason was the one touching me, it was Henry I felt. When Mason would kiss me softly on the cheek, all I wanted was Henry's rough, demanding lips on my neck. Every gentle caress from my husband only reminded me of the wildness I now craved. The weeks passed, and the secret I had tried to keep from my husband became a new corrosive way of life. At first, Mason acted like he didn't notice. Maybe he was in denial. Maybe he thought it was just a phase that I would get it out of my system. But I didn't. I just went deeper. Henry started calling me late at night. Sometimes I would sneak out of my own house while Mason slept. Other times I would lie and say I was going to a late-night yoga class or an early morning brunch with friends. But all I wanted was him. Henry never treated me like a fragile wife. He talked to me like a craving. He took me like a secret. I was no longer the woman Mason had married. I was someone new, someone dangerous. One night, Henry came to our house. Mason had invited him. I almost choked on my wine when I saw him standing at our front door. Mason opened a bottle of expensive wine, played some low, moody music, and asked Henry to sit down and make himself comfortable. My hands trembled as I poured the wine. I knew what was happening. Mason hadn't lost control. He had given it away completely. After a tense, silent dinner, Mason leaned back on the couch and said something that changed everything, that broke everything. "I want to watch again," he said, his voice calm, cold, like a man watching a game instead of his wife preparing to betray him under his own roof. "But this time, I want to see how far you will go." I looked at Henry. He just stood up, walked over, took the wine glass from my trembling hand, and set it down on the table. Then, without a word, he pulled me toward the stairs. I looked back at Mason. He just nodded, a single permissive gesture. That night was the wildest of them all. Henry did not hold back. He used me. He pushed my limits. He called me names I never thought I would respond to. But I did. With moans, with whimpers, with every last inch of my submission. And Mason sat in the armchair across the room sipping his wine like he was watching a movie. His eyes were blank hollow. The moment Henry finished inside me, I collapsed on the bed panting, covered in sweat, and a deep, profound shame. Mason stood up, walked over and kissed me on the forehead again. But this time, I saw it clearly in his eyes. Resentment. Weeks after that night, things changed for good. Mason barely touched me. He barely spoke to me. We went from passionate experimental evenings to long, cold, silent dinners. I would find him just staring at me with a distant, haunted look like he was remembering the woman I used to be. One night after another silent dinner, he finally asked, his voice full of a quiet, devastating pain, "Did I give you what you wanted? Because now I cannot look at you without seeing him." I said nothing. He continued, his voice breaking, "You are not mine anymore, and maybe that's my fault. Maybe I broke us." The next morning I woke up to a cold bed and a letter on the nightstand. He was gone. Just like that. No fight, no begging, no chance to fix it. Henry was still around, but it didn't feel the same. Now that Mason was out of the picture, the fire, the danger started to fade. The secrecy, the thrill, it was all gone. And I started to see things for what they really were. Henry never wanted a real relationship. He never wanted to stay. He liked the power, the taboo, the game. And when the game was over, so was he. He stopped texting. He stopped calling. And just like that, I was alone. No husband. No lover. Just a deafening silence and a house full of ghosts and memories. People often ask me if I regret it. Sometimes I say no, because for the first time in my life, I felt truly, intensely alive. But other times when I lie awake at night, I am haunted by the sound of my husband's voice. I cannot look at you without seeing him. He shared me because he thought it would bring us closer, but it destroyed everything. So here I am now. Not a wife, not a mistress, just a woman who flew too close to the fire and burned everything, including herself, in the process.